Good day, everybody. My name is Dr. Ifobi. Today, we're going to be talking about the coronavirus. If you're watching this video right now, you're watching it because you're interested in understanding what this virus is. And more importantly, you want to know what steps to take to prevent it. The coronavirus isn't entirely new. There actually have been a number of cases in history where we have made contact with this. The first one that we probably made contact with is the one that comes as the common cold. Now, the common cold is something that everybody has had at some point in their lives. We've also had the Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome, and that is another one that occurred a couple of years ago in the Middle East. We've also had the SARS virus of maybe a number of years ago as well. And most recently, we've had the novel coronavirus. In fact, it's so new that it was just named not too long ago. Now, the coronavirus actually is a zoonotic virus, and this means that it's an infection that human beings have now that human beings haven't always had. It was previously something that would infect animals, but today it has mutated and acquired new properties that allowed it to become infectious to human beings. Now, it has spread all over the world. The epicenter was in China, and it has spread from China to most part of the world. The next question that needs to be answered now is, how does it spread? One of the earliest myths that came with the coronavirus was the suggestion that the coronavirus couldn't infect people in the tropical regions because of the high temperatures. That has since been put to bed. Another question that has risen in the conversation of the coronavirus is, can mosquitoes transmit the virus? And the answer to that is a categorical no. At this point, no studies have shown that it's something that can be transmitted by mosquitoes. Other questions include things like antibiotic use. Can using antibiotics prevent or treat the virus? The answer to that is a large no, with some question marks, because at this point it's still new and we've not seen everything that can or cannot work against it. But so far, because it's a virus, this body of knowledge that exists now suggests that antibiotics have limited effectivity against a virus. We've observed and noticed that people who are older, senior citizens, actually are more vulnerable to running a more serious or more potentially heavy clinical course than younger people or people who do not have existing comorbidities. Lastly, because this virus was found in China, the question comes of, if I buy something that was made in China, something that was imported from China, could I have the virus? The answer to that question is that at this point, there is no study that has shown conclusively that objects imported from China actually are routes or means of transmission of that virus. So how does this virus move from person A to person B? It is transmitted by what we call the air droplet method. This means primarily that if a person should cough, sneeze, or even just speak, they often produce a cloud of moisture which has suspended in it the actual biologically active substances, namely the viruses. And if a person were to inhale some of that, then they could become infected. The other one is that sometimes when these air droplets are released, they could settle on all the things that you would touch regularly. And if a person were to touch those things and transfer the same via their fingers, then they could become infected. Now, if a person becomes infected, what would you see? What are the symptoms? The first is a fever. The second is nasal congestion, or what we call a blocked nose. In addition to that, there's a difficulty in breathing, which is described as bilateral interstitial pneumonia, which is what actually results in a lot of the mortalities observed from this virus. This doesn't always happen, and most people who have recovered, some of them haven't had this symptom at all. The mortality rate is around 3.4. As at the 18th of March 2020, we had approximately 288,000 cases with over 9,000 mortalities. That number has been changing on a daily basis, and I assume that by the time you're watching this video, it would have significantly changed to some degree. What should you do when you are in an environment that has the virus, or what should you do even if you're not in that kind of an environment? The first and probably the most important thing you need to do is to avoid non-essential travel to those areas. Should you be in those areas, it's important that you maintain some amount of distance between you and anybody. That is why you've been hearing the phrase social distancing for a long time since the virus began. It's important that we keep at least 6 feet between people, especially if we're in the epicenter of the virus. More importantly, today, it's important that we avoid areas where large numbers of people congregate in small spaces. Additionally, if you are in that kind of environment, it's important that you use a face mask. But using a face mask presents peculiar problems, because if not properly used, then it can increase a person's chance of catching or making contact with the virus itself. Now, a face mask typically has two sides. There's a darker side and there's a lighter side. The darker side should be the one outside. It should be clipped to your ears, and then you should pin down the iron pin at the top of your nose so that it matches or follows the contour of your nose. Now, this is to ensure that every air you inhale comes through the mask and not through anywhere around it. If you're wearing the mask for the first time, for example, it presents certain peculiar challenges. Now, the first thing you notice is that it restricts the amount of air you can inhale, because the air is now passing through a filter. So you're not getting it in as much volume as you would get if that filter were absent. And this often makes people think about, pulling it down to get a little bit more air. Now, this is a problem because at the time when you've pulled it down, the protection isn't there anymore. But secondly, or probably more importantly, the fact that you've used your fingers to pull it down suggests that you might have transferred some of the things that were filtered out onto your fingers. Should you take those same fingers and transfer them maybe to your phone because of using it, or shaking someone's hand, or eating, or any of those kind of things, then you could potentially have transmitted the virus from wherever it first was to your system, or the system of whoever it is that makes contact with things that are on your hand. This brings us to hand washing. It is important that our hands are washed as regularly and as properly as possible. Now, washing your hand with soap and water is very, very effective with regards to preventing this virus. Should water and soap not be available, please make use of a hand sanitizer. The alcohol-based ones are particularly effective at this. But you must understand that it must be used properly as well. So apply it to all the portions, all the areas of your hand, your palms, behind your hand, in between your fingers, and importantly, your fingertips. They must all be covered, because for the alcohol to act, it has to make contact with whatever is going to sanitize. Importantly, you should remember to teach your children about hand washing. And then if they are old enough to be able to hold and manage sanitizer properly, then have that given to them as well. More importantly, if your hands have not been washed, they have no business being in your mouth, in your nose, or in your eyes. Note that I didn't say your face, because your face is not made up of living tissue. Actually, the face that you can see doesn't have living tissue. But if you put those hands in your nose, into your mouth, into your eyes, you're going to make contact with mucous membrane that is actually living tissue. And then there's a chance that you might have infected yourself with the virus. If you don't rest adequately, if you're not eating properly, you have a chance of depressing your immune system because of those simple things that you thought, I could always get away with. So eat properly, eat regularly, rest adequately, and then you can give your immune system a boost by taking fruits and vegetables, specifically from the citrus family. Please, your high touch areas should be cleaned properly. Use a disinfectant wipe to clean your phone surface, to clean your tablet, to clean your keyboard, and importantly, as you go through the day, you clean your the banisters, the railings, and the door handles, because you're not the only one who touches those places. The last thing I want to say is that in the time of an infection, where your information comes from is probably more important than infection itself. As far as the coronavirus is concerned, in Nigeria, the NCDC have been doing a very good job of putting out information about it. They send out information very regularly, every day. You should pay attention to that. If you're outside of Nigeria, or even if you're in Nigeria, you can still look at the WHO website, and there they send out situation reports on a daily basis. Every morning they have a new CITREP. And from there, you can derive your information. If you have any questions, please consult a medical professional. Importantly, at this time, you're going to see a lot of videos, a lot of people who are saying things that they have no way of verifying. Please take those with several pinches of salt. Pay little attention to them. Let's do these things that we've suggested in this video, and we'll live to talk about this virus from a place of history. Thank you very much.